Sleeping Beauty is one of the most... Sleeping Beauty is definitely one of the most famous ballets of all time. Most people are familiar with the Disney version of the fairy tale, but the ballet actually predates the Disney movie. It was first created in 1890 at the Mariinsky Theater. It was a collaboration between Marius Petipa, the choreographer, and Tchaikovsky, the composer. Tchaikovsky thought it was one of his greatest accomplishments, actually. So at the beginning of the ballet, we're introduced to a king and queen. So the king and queen have been desperate to have a child, and when they finally do have a baby girl, they're really excited and have a big celebration and invite everyone in the land, including these magical fairies. And each fairy bestows the baby with a different gift. So there's the fairy of joy, and the fairy of kindness, and the fairy of beauty. I really wish there was a fairy of like wit or sense of humor, because I feel like that's the one thing Aurora's missing. But before the most powerful fairy, the lilac fairy, is able to bestow wisdom, the fairy of jealousy shows up at the party, and she is very angry because she was not invited. So the fairy of jealousy is named Carabosse, and she comes in with all her minions and causes quite a stir and demands to know why she wasn't invited. And I'm not really sure why she wasn't invited. I think, she is a force to be reckoned with, so maybe they forgot to invite her, but maybe it was on purpose. So she is so angry that she puts a curse on the baby, and she says that on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on a spindle and die. So of course, everyone is really upset by this, and the lilac fairy luckily hasn't bestowed her gift. So she uses her power to kind of do a counter curse, and she says that on Aurora's 16th birthday, she will not die, but she will fall asleep for 100 years, and true love's kiss will awaken her and break the spell. During Act 1, we're introduced to Aurora. It's her 16th birthday. She has all these suitors there from different lands to hopefully win her hand in marriage. Win her hand. So right after we're introduced to Aurora, the 16-year-old, she performs the Rosadagio, which is one of the most technically demanding parts for a ballerina. But shortly after that, sort of this mysterious person enters and wants to give Aurora a gift. She hands her this spindle, and Aurora is very innocent and not suspecting anyone wants to hurt her. I'm sure no one's told her about this curse. So she ends up pricking her finger and falling asleep. So Act 1 ends with the lilac fairy putting the whole land to sleep. So Act 2, we finally get to meet the prince, who is definitely kind of a lonely, brooding type character looking for something. We meet him with his hunting party, and he's just very disinterested. So the lilac fairy appears to the prince in the forest, and she shows him a vision of Aurora, and he is really taken by her beauty, and they get into a boat, and she leads him to this land where everyone's asleep so that he can kiss Aurora and wake her up. So at the end of Act 2, the lilac fairy and the prince, finally get to the land where Aurora's asleep, but Carabosse still doesn't want her curse to, I guess she wants Aurora to die. So she's still fighting it, but ultimately the prince kisses Aurora, wakes her up, and Carabosse ends up flying up in the air and spinning, and there's pyrotechnics, and that's one really cool thing about this version is that it's very theatrical. I mean, there's all this technical dancing and beautiful costuming, but there's also a lot of pyrotechnics and things that you don't always see at the ballet. So then finally we get to Act 3, which is the royal wedding, and you get to meet a whole bunch of different characters that show up. So you have, I think the Frog Prince is there, and the Little Red Riding Hood, and so there's all these characters from different fairy tales there to witness the wedding. So yeah, it ends happily, and good overcomes evil.